be a little, tight tonight.
It's just the plates at the end. That's the right book. Oh, I think it's something.
Good here.
It's at the end.
I just wondered if that
It
was-
doesn't so It's good. There's nothing. Yes.
Anybody else have questions? Either you're very smart or I'm a perfect teacher, one of the two. The odds are, the second part is not that case.
Did everyone sign this so far?
When you're studying at home, make sure you keep a notebook beside so that when you run across something, whether it's a term or a concept or something that doesn't make sense, make a note of it. Because you're not going to remember it by the time you get back to class. Now, you'll remember there's something you were supposed to remember. You just won't remember what that is. Or maybe that's just me.
We were on page 7 of the first one, and I missed something that you mentioned, like 4 rules about
Pricing property.
questions when, of listing.
Seller's motivated.
What is that?
The seller is motivated. Property shows well. I mean, this is just logical thing. Property shows well.
I got that.
The,
Price.
yeah,
Property price.
properly priced. And then sufficient days on the market. In other words, if the market's 180 to 200 days and I take a 6-month listing, I'm just about guaranteed my chances of winning are 0. But that's just common sense stuff. I don't care what you're saying.
Is it 4 of them?
Hmm?
Is it 4 things or just 3?
4.
That's 3. 1, 2, 3.
Seller's motivated.
1.
Seller's motivated. Property shows well.
Yeah.
Property is priced properly. And there's sufficient time in the listing agreement for a buyer to show up. But see, the marketplace tells you when the buyer's going to show up. I give you a perfect example. We have friends, well, we still have, we have friends that wanted to sell their condo down on the grounds of Boca Hotel, Management Court, and which obviously is a seasonal place. And I took the listing the first week of November. Guess what happened until January? Guess how many showings I had? None. Did I have a seller that was a little aggravated?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did is I went to the MLS and I looked at the sales from the year before. I noticed there were 9 sales closed. 7 of those 9 closed between February and the end of March. February to the end of April. And I showed him that. Guess what happened in the middle of January, beginning of February? People started showing up. Just when we closed, May the 7th. Why? Because that's what the market dictates. That the buyers are gonna show up during season. Imagine if I'd have taken the listing in July. You know, I definitely probably wouldn't have a friend at that point. But that's what I mean. That was pure facts. He's a business person. He's been in real estate all his life. I laid that in front of him. He couldn't argue with it. Because numbers don't lie. But I have to know what those numbers are. Anytime I open my mouth, if I want to be successful with it, I need to back it up with facts. Something in black and white that justifies my statement. So just, all right. All right, let's go back to the beginning of the chapter. I just want to touch on a few things here to get us back up to speed. If they ask you, what is the state law that governs real estate? Your answer would be? Chapter 475. How many parts is 475 broken into?
2,
Nope,
3.
nope,
5.
nope.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
How many parts
4.
4.
is 475 broken into?
4.
How many?
4.
4.
You sure?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
You positive?
Yes.
Why? Because it's in black and white right there. That's how I know I'm right. And how I know you're wrong. What's part 1 do? Real estate brokers, sales associate, brokers associates, real estate schools and instructors. Part 2?
Real estate appraisers.
Real estate appraisers. Why?
To appraise the property.
Why are they in a separate category? Because federal law dictated that appraisers had to be licensed separately. Somewhere along the way, if you're talking about regulation, it's something that happened in the law that causes this statement now to be true. Number three and number 4 deal with commercial. Well, 2 things can happen in commercial. You can lease it, or you can buy it. If you buy it, you fall under number 3. Because number 3 is about commercial sales. It does not allow the broker to put a lien on the property, even if the buyer agrees, the seller agrees to it. What it allows them to do is go after the commission, or I'm sorry, after the net from the sale. In the rental side, the courts will dictate to the tenants that they will pay the broker X amount of payment until the broker's commission has been paid. So basically, the broker would be, if it's a sale, would be able to put a lien on the net proceeds. Or if it's a rental, they could put a lien on the rent until they're paid. That's not true in residential, and I'll show you later in the chapters when we get it. In residential, if the seller agrees in writing that you can put a lien on the property for your commission, you can do such. Don't think you find probably too many sellers who think that's a good idea, but it is there.
How often that happens? That you
3,468 times in the last 4 months.
That's a lot.
Now, give me the real answer I was gonna give it. I have no
I agree.
like that. It doesn't happen that much. Commercial, and that part, I don't spend a lot of time with commercials, so I can't really give you an answer. I don't think it's a high time. It also depends on the amount of the commission. Commission's $3,000 or $4,000. You might be right, but it may cost you $5,000 to prove it. And then all you gotta do is what? Collect it. So I get a judgment against you. What do we do? Now I gotta find some way of getting that money out of your pocket. And FREC can't demand that you repay a commission that you weren't due. Or they do not resolve disputes between brokers over commission. That is a civil matter that's handled maybe through the Realtor Association with the Grievance Committee or through the local courts. So I have to understand how the law comes into play in these situations. How many types of licenses are there?
Well, what's the question? How many?
How many types of licenses?
Four.
Four?
Three. Oh, three.
Somebody tell me what page it is. It's the page where we talk about 3 types of license. Page 18.
You guys that just come in, don't forget to sign in.
They're doing it.
What is the difference between license, a broker and broker associate?
What? You know it is? Tell me.
The broker associate is when the person practice real estate, and they choose to not to work for himself, but for another broker.
And what's a broker?
But you have to have the same license as a broker, right? I understand, but there's no difference in the license. Broker,
Right.
we use license.
There's 2 different categories, there's BL and BQ, or BK. BK is a broker who has his own office. A BL is one that is a broker associate. That's how you can tell by looking at their license, whether they're a broker or whether they're a broker associate. Now, let me ask you this question. As a broker associate, are you allowed to function like a broker, or do you have to like a associate? So anything that a sales associate can or cannot do is what a broker associate can or cannot do. Now, broker associate does have one advantage. They can do what? Anytime they want to. Open up their own office, switch their license from broker associate to active broker. Majority of people with brokers' licenses are broker associates. I'm broker associate. I have enough issues without having to be responsible for 600 people. Guess I can't say that because I have to. Yes.
Like if Signature Realty is like the umbrella, would Signature Paradise Realty be
would be another licensed broker. So you have to understand that this company is very unique. We're not like a Kai's, for example. The Kai's has a main office, and then all the rest of their locations are branch offices of Kai's. It says Kai's. That's not the case with us. We've got 4 offices that are Century Village. We have 2 offices that are Kings Point. We have an office in
Denver and Mark.
Huntington.
Lake.
On the lake?
Then we have, actually, when you see the term signature listing companies, that's the term that actually encompasses all those names I just supplied. In the office where Paradise is, there's 4 companies in there. When you go to Delray, at Hagen Ranch and Atlantic,
Oreo.
there is about 3 or 4 offices in there.
So are they considered broker associates? They're brokers.
There's a broker for each one of those companies. Guess who it is? Ben,
Then,
except for a couple. And then a couple of them, there's a couple there. You know what, doesn't make a difference to you.
Do you have any for Lauderdale?
Pembroke Pines. We're gonna have offices in a lot of places.
Is it just Southern Florida, or is it all of Florida?
A lot of places. We're already working on one in Fort Myers. So I don't like giving specifics. Go, you know what Dale told us in class? Listen up, we have an office in.
It's a record.
Yeah, it's on tape, so. By the way, every class is gonna be taped, so you don't have to ask to have it taped, so it's a matter of access. What makes a sales associate different from a broker?
The associate works for the broker, works under the broker. The broker has the office and then they're.
So everything belongs to the broker?
Yes,
Your listings belong to the broker?
yes.
Yeah, because you work under.
Everything belongs to the broker.
Under
The
control
broker
or
pays
management.
you.
On what basis?
a contract,
What contract?
a sales contract between.
Independent contractors
Yeah,
agreement is gone. See these listing agreements that we talk about? They're not yours. You did all the work to get them, but they're not yours. Why? Because you're not allowed to operate on your own, so they can't be yours. So the listing agreement doesn't dictate what you're entitled to. Your independent contractors agreement does. Because the listing agreement is between the company and the seller. So the seller owes you, the associate, absolutely nothing. But are you there as a representative of the company?
Yes.
Yes. And you will see that you will be the one that signs the listing agreement as the authorized associate. Because I don't think Ben's gonna spend his days signing listing agreements. And we do have a few. If I said that you're taking a pre-license course, does that mean you have a license?
No, no.
If I'm saying you're taking a post-license course, There's room, there's chairs up front if you'd like.
Thank you.
After you have the license.
And you said
You have to have a license.
I'm more comfortable now. Thank you.
Yeah, because post license sounds like you already have a license. And are you required to continue your education?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got pre-license, post-license, and continuing education.
May I ask you, what the continuing education does? I mean, past continuing education, it just changing the laws or?
It keeps you up to date. Keeps you up to date on what's going on in real estate.
Every 2 years, okay.
You guys that don't have a table, we have some room here, I apologize. I'll move some of this stuff. There's a couple of chairs here.
You know what, you can sit on the edge.
There's two seats right here.
There's one here.
I don't bite. You'll notice that she set up something last time, she has no marks on her, so. Plus it's easy to see the board.
Oh, that's gonna fall asleep.
Look at the board screens going crazy.
It's because I, okay, slow down, slow down.
Anybody have a candy? It's all that's good and it's
Yes, to keep something on it.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing on it right
There's
now.
nothing on it? What if you unplug the keyboard?
all the computer wizards that we can go to. I know I'm not one of them.
Okay. Maybe we'll play. All right. Are you allowed to take listings in your own name?
No.
Who are you?
Still associates working under the broker.
Pre-license.
Now, I want to know what you are. I told you the other night what you were. I want you to tell me now what I told you.
Boy, real estate.
Student. Student.
See, this is why you're
I'm a
not the
realtor.
best. Because you don't know who you are. So you're not going to answer the question from the perspective that you should be answering it from. Who did I tell you you were after you walked through that door? A sales associate. Not a real estate agent, a sales associate, who has absolutely no rights whatsoever. I have to understand the relationship between the broker and myself. You have to start thinking like a sales associate, not like a buyer, not like, you're not here to be a buyer or a seller, or a landlord or a tenant. You don't need to be here to do that. Because we had two terms, brokering real estate, which meant what? I want to know what brokering real estate means.
You open up your own office.
You and everything.
You represent other
You
people
and it.
buying and selling.
For commission, buying and selling, or,
Someone that will.
no, that's a sales
You have an office and you buy and you sell real estate. Yeah, with an office.
And you own everything.
Remember there were two main things that you had to get from this class? The one you're doing the worst on right now is vocabulary.
deal for others for commission,
For what?
for commission.
Wrong.
Compensation,
Not commission, compensation.
compensation,
Commission is only one form
or
of compensation. In a little while, we're gonna talk about the 8 services of real estate. As a sales associate, can you perform all of those 8 services?
No.
No.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter what the services are at this point. I'm telling you, there are 8 services of real estate. As a sales associate, can you perform those 8 services?
Yes.
License, yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you mean, if you're licensed? Who's that
No,
saying
no,
it work?
no, you are already licensed.
Reinforcing the answer. If you license them, you are going to do anything for the broker. You represent the
No,
broker.
no, I think I know.
That's what I think it is.
Well, the answer is yes or no.
Yes.
Yes.
You guys let me know when you're finished or not, and I'll move on.
Yes.
For those of you that are thumbing through the book, you're wasting your time. Not everything you're gonna find out in this class is in the book. Now, my question was, can a sales associate perform all of the 8 services of real estate?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
How many of you say yes? How many of you say no? Okay. Which one of the 8 can't the associate perform?
The ones required to have a brokerage license.
No.
They're all required to have broker's license.
B,
Oh, I think I know.
What?
The ones that require a specific.
How many is that?
Specific.
How many is that? 8.
8, yes.
People, it's not that you can't do the 8 services, you can't do it on your own. That's what you're not getting. Just a minor little detail. You can perform the 8 services of real estate, you just can't do it on your own. You have to do it under the supervision and direction of the broker.
So,
For example, you go out and take listings, but you put the listing in the name of the company, and you sign it on behalf of the company. But we know that listing doesn't belong to me as a sales associate. It's real clear. It didn't even belong to Ben per se. It belongs to the company. How do I know that? Because it says that the broker is Signature International Real Estate, and the seller is John and Mary Smith. So the key here is, I can do just about anything a broker can do, I just can't do it on my own. Now, there are, one thing we know for sure, you can't have your own office. You can use an office that was provided by you from the broker. But you're gonna have to make a hell of a lot of commission to get one of those. Those don't come free. The typical real estate office is very much changed over the years when I've done the real estate. I remember they used to be, they'd spend $200,000 or $300,000 on a 2,000 square foot office. Dial it up, especially because it's in Boca. They don't do that now. Economically, bottom line, you can't justify spending that kind of money. As a sales associate, do I have to work with a broker?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
How you gonna?
Answer is no. I can work for an owner developer also.
Oh, yes.
See, the problem is this, most of the discussions in this course aren't going to be about you working for a developer. It could be about you working for a broker. Every once in a while, they'll throw a question in. So it's understandable that you wouldn't really remember that you can also work with an owner. Yes?
Can someone without a real estate work for a developer and help them sell?
Yeah.
Or, oh. But you don't have to have a real estate license for that?
You're on salary, it's a raise.
Right.
I answered her question. I didn't explain her question. And I'm not going to right now. You'll understand why in a few pages. Because I'm hoping that in a lot of situations, you're going to be ahead of me in your answer in relationship to how much material I'm covering. That's a good thing. It's a pain, but it's a good thing. Because if you can't even keep up with me, we're going to have a problem. If you're a step or two ahead of me because you're kind of catching it, that's great. Learn to answer the question as asked. Because most of the questions tonight I've said yes or no. And you've given me a dissertation of the information. Which means you got your question right and mine wrong. You don't have to explain the answer, you just have to give the answer. This isn't an essay test, thank God. Although my daughter loves essay questions. She hates multiple guess. I like multiple choice because it's mathematical. And just about any question, you could drop two answers before you have to think. Are you working on the questions at the end of the chapter? Like you didn't have too many chapters to do that with. You need to pay attention to what kind of mistake you're making. And you find that if I'm making that same mistake in every chapter, I need to talk to them. Because there's something wrong with my mechanics, is what it is. It kind of sounds like a stupid thing, but it is. How you approach a question, a multiple choice question, can affect. Is there a difference between must and may? A little difference or a big difference? Big difference. If I must do something versus I may do something, so I'm going to be very conscious of how they present the question. And verbs are something they play with.
Must is an absolute and may is a possible.
Yes. How about can?
Capable.
You're able to do it.
Okay. How about shall?
You have to.
You may do it.
Nope.
Well, if you will.
Shall does not mean maybe. Shall-
You
it
will,
means
you
must. I'll show you why. The sales contract that we use, put out by Florida Association of Realtors and Florida Bar, just about once a year, they make revisions in the contract. One of the revisions they made about 4 years ago now is they changed all the wills in the contract to shalls. I asked one of the attorneys for the department why they did that. They said, will is not black and white. Shall is black and white. It is that, no interpretation. What you see, that's what it is. So if a listing agreement said the broker may release the seller, do they have to?
No.
But what if it says the broker shall terminate the listing agreement if asked by the seller? Now the broker's obligated to. Guess which one's in their listing agreement?
Shall.
You have to be kidding me.
I didn't hear that question.
Yes, I will. Shall means what?
Must.
You must. May means you can, but you don't have to. So, as a broker, would you rather the listing agreement say that you shall terminate it if the seller wants, or you may terminate it if the seller wants?
May.
Who are you? Who are your sales associate? Let me ask you a stupid question. How much money are you going to make if you're constantly letting people out of contracts?
Nothing.
Nothing. Answer is may. A listing agreement isn't built to the benefit of the seller. It's designed to protect who? The broker. Because a listing agreement is not an agreement between adverse parties like a sales contract. A listing agreement is an employment contract between the company and the seller. Seller has hired us to do what? Get their home sold. Actually, they didn't hire me to get their home sold. I can't sell their home.
To be the intermediate, the medium liaison.
I can't sell their house. Why?
Yourself?
Because I don't own it.
Yeah.
So what's my job?
Help them.
Find buyers. That's my job. Now, I might do that through the MLS, where there's 20,000 realtors. I might do that by talking to my friends in my sphere of influence and see if there's anybody they know looking to buy a home in that community. That's my job. Because the majority of times, if I have the listing, I don't produce the buyer, some other agent does. All right, everything we just did is on page 18, lines 10 to 37. We've already put a star beside of lines 10 through 20, through actually 19.
So 10 to 21?
21.
No, highlighted.
10 to 19. For those of you that are just starting, when I put a star beside something, it means that it's material that'll show up on the class exam. When I put a bracket, or I have you highlight it, it may or may not be a star. But it may be something I feel that's very important that you need to know that doesn't happen to be one of the questions on the class exam. I told you the other night, I'm not teaching this class exam. I'm handing it to you on a silver platter. I'm telling you, with those stars, that material right there is going to be a question. All right, let's move on. This is kind of at the top of 19. Well, how many of you have already applied for the state, for the license? Okay. So you already know this. Once you apply, what's the next thing that happens? Fingerprint. Yeah, you get every broker on the face of the earth contacted. but you're already employed. I apply, what's the second thing that happens? And when's that gonna happen? Wednesday. I'm gonna have the gal supposed to get here by 5:30, so if you can get here a little early. And I believe it's still $62.
Any form, check, cash?
Yeah, you know where you use a check, because he won't send it in until your check clears.
Okay.
So you're better off to use, credit card, debit card, cash.
You have to do it the same night?
Huh?
You have to do the fingerprint the same night that he's here?
Yeah, because they're not coming back
That's
until
what he-
next class. Now, you can work, find out where they operate, it's not convenient that time.
Is it, okay, is it gonna do it before the class or during the class or at the end of the class?
Yes.
All the three?
It just depends on how long it takes them to get through
Okay,
it,
good,
so
okay.
I'm gonna try to get them started as quickly as possible.
Okay.
That's what I was talking about. On page 19, line 14 through 19. As a veteran, can I get a break on the fees I pay if I want to get a real estate license?
Yes.
Notice that you have 6 months after honorable discharge to apply. And that really applies to just about any of those licensed agencies that are under the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, that they will waive that. Then it talks about the fingerprints there, and go ahead and more to say about it. The reason I like using, you can go to the police station, you can go just about anywhere, but he does it with a scanner. And the chances of getting a smudged finger is pretty slim. And he sends it off right away. And then you will get an email from, I shouldn't say him, it's now her. You'll get an email from her. They send it directly to the state, and it processes through pretty quick. Then you will get another notice that you are now approved for the state exam, as soon as you pass the class exam. But that's the point in time that Lisa was talking about, when you should be making reservations to take that exam.
The fingerprints is 6 months before you take the exam itself.
No,
How long does it last?
60 days. Yeah, your fingerprints are only good for 60 days. I never understood that. Yeah.
They need this revenue stream. Because everything was real estate.
Page 20. Let's put a bracket around lines 1 through 35. We did that? And I had you highlight star line 3. The type of moving violations that would not get you in trouble. On top of page 21, they talk about how long they have to notify you if there's something wrong with your application, which is 30 days. And they have 90 days from the time that you get all the correct information to them. Yeah. Now, this has to stop. Anybody else? Everybody else got a highlighter? Okay. I am denied by the department to get a license. You don't have the right to challenge that. How long? 21 days. From when?
From the time.
From the time you're told that you've been denied. And there's a whole process that you have to go through. You ultimately may wind up at FREC committee pleading your case. I've had 3 people over the years that have done that. They've all gotten approved. I have one other that took her 4 months to finally convince them to give her, to let her take the exam. Because on prom night, they decided to go to Burger King and buy a bunch of hamburgers. And then they went out Waxahachie Road to the dike where all the alligators are. And they were throwing hamburgers to the alligators. Do you know that's a felony? So if you're thinking about going to have some fun and throw some food to the alligator, number one, when they get big, they can eat you. And number two, you may be in jail so they have a hard time getting older. Now, and she was almost 40 with 3 kids.
Oh my God.
And this happened when she was 17 years old, so.
Oh, wow.
And you have to understand that regulatory law does not necessarily have any logic thought process. It is what it is. See, regulatory law isn't created to prevent something. Regulatory law is created to keep it from happening again. We didn't used to have laws for murder. Until what?
Somebody committed murder.
Until people committed murder. We didn't have speed limits. When cars were first invented, there were no speed limits. When they wound up killing themselves and everybody else, they realized what? They need to drive at a speed that is reasonable to control the vehicle.
Alcohol wasn't illegal.
Hmm?
I said alcohol wasn't illegal.
No, this, well, at some points it was though, you know, you got prohibition.
Yeah, prohibition. Atlantic City time.
What you see on the overhead is, overhead. On the monitor, lines 1 through 39. 22. Where it says non-resident applicant requirement.
Are there any, is there anyone who is a non-resident who can't? Like illegal aliens, God forbid? I mean, this is the age of Trump.
Little Rocket Man.
Even those who have a social security number. These are actually number.
I'm gonna make one comment here. Everybody listen. Whatever your, position is regarding, people in power in the country, keep to yourself. It's not allowed in the classroom. I don't agree or disagree, I don't have an opinion in here. The outside here, maybe opinion.
apologize for that,
It's okay.
but I do want to know the answer to the question.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting,
You know, me too. I wanna know if the IT number can be used also.
say what?
So, here require a social security number.
Yeah.
The IT number has the same number of digits.
Mhm.
So it can be used an IT number?
No,
It can be used for other parts of business, what I.
you asked me a question.
Huh?
You asked me a question.
Yes.
I answered it.
Okay. IT number come on, okay.
Does anybody know why they require, they used to require it. Does anybody know why?
Senior year.
Require
That's
what?
how they catch people that aren't paying their alimony and child support. They'll deny you the license. Or they'll put the license on suspension until you start paying. So you ladies need to make sure that you're paying. Now, we'll come back to these notes for a second, but I want to set up this whole segment here. In order to get a real estate license in the state of Florida, you do not have to be a resident. You do not have to be a U.S. citizen. You never have to set foot in the state of Florida to become a broker. Yes?
And that's because you can work from any office from anywhere around the world and just have somebody else handle it. So if I'm friends with a real estate agent that like I went to high school with, and then I moved to Australia, and I have my license and we're both working for the same company, but I get a lead, I can give it to him and still get credit from that lead because I'm licensed.
Depends on what Australia says.
I'll give him taxes.
See, now, the rules aren't the same in every country or every state.
So if I'm
Or every
doing-
county, well, I shouldn't say county because it's state-based.
So I have to pay, you would have to consult with another country to see if it's okay.
How about you let me give you an example?
That's fair, go ahead.
You decide you want a real estate license in Florida. So you go online, take the course, pass. You apply, now you live in Cleveland. Now, my Lord, you live in Cleveland. Now I made somebody back, somebody in Cleveland. So you, apply to the Department of Business and Professional Regulation for the license. You are granted the right to take the exam. You pass the online course that you took. Pearson View is throughout the whole country. So they have the ability to get these tests sent to them in Cleveland so that you can go into the testing center and take the exam. So let's assume that you passed. Now, let's go back to the gentleman over there. He has a friend in West Palm Beach that has a real estate office. But again, he's in Cleveland. Can he place his license with his friend in West Palm?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Now, prior to the first renewal, there's a 45-hour course with an exam that you have to take and pass. The subsequent years after that first year of your license, you take 14 hours of continuing education every 2 years to renew your license, which he does. Then he decides 5 years down the road, he wants his broker's license. Again, goes back online, passes the broker's course online, applies to the state of Florida for the broker's license. They grant him the right to take the exam, he passes the exam, and he's now a licensed broker. It's not active yet, because your license comes inactive, and then you tell them what you want to do. Do you want to stay inactive, or do you want to be a broker, active broker, or a broker associate? He decides he wants to be an active broker. So he opens up an office in Cleveland. All of that is legal as far as FREC is concerned. What will be required of him by the state of Ohio is another story. Now, there's an illustration. Let me give you real life. Had a gal in class, she was from Finland. Her father was very involved in real estate in Finland. And she had come here and got her license. And she came to me after passing the broker state exam and she says, here's what I want to do. And I never knew this. She says, there's a large Finnish population in Lake Worth. So I'm going to open up an office in Lake Worth and tie it to an office in Finland, which I thought was kind of brilliant, especially with the contacts that she had in Finland. Made a lot of sense. And nobody from Europe comes to Florida.
Miami.
Well, actually, in this case, not Miami. So she was asking me, could she do the office in Finland? And I said, I don't know of anything in 475 that says you can't. But that was about a week before I was going on to one of my instructor seminars for renewal. And I said, I'll try to track down one of the attorneys and ask them. And I posed that scenario to him. You know, his response was, she wouldn't even have to have a license here.
What?
As long as it's not a problem with her having a license in Finland.
She can use hers.
Because the law does not dictate where that license has to be. Now, later on in chapter 5, we'll talk more about the office and what's involved in it. But there's nothing in 475 that says where it has to be. There's certain requirements of it, but where it's located is another story. So, looking at that, I looked at it from one side. I looked at it from Florida. I don't know how Ohio would look at that, or how Finland would look at it. So I found that to be rather interesting.
I have a question. Up there it says Florida residency is not required, but if you become a non-resident, you have to notify them?
Yes.
Why, if it's not required?
Why? They have an obligation to keep you abreast of everything that's going on, and there's a lot of documents and stuff that go out. Therefore, they always have to know where you are. If you're moving to another state, they give you 6 months. If you're moving across the street, they give you 10 days. So you always have to make sure that in your file at the state that you created when you went for your license, that you keep your mailing address current. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give me an example how someone would have a social security and be a non-resident and, I mean, you would, it
I
just
have
seems
social-
contradictory.
I
also.
have a social security number. I've had it since I was born. When I first
I mean, I'm
came here,
sorry.
I didn't live here. I came here for years on vacation.
Right,
I don't
but,
think I'm answering your question.
no,
Maybe.
you're
There's a
not.
lot of people that are here on 12B1 visas that they are afforded a social security number. It may say not valid for work, but they're given on the different circumstances of the immigration rule laws.
So they have to be an immigrant that has the right to work here.
That is afforded a social security by the social security office.
Okay.
And they're not legal
No, but that
resident,
isn't
but
what
they.
he said. You don't need to be a resident in here. You
But
can-
that's why I'm saying it's kind of contradictory, because unless you are either a legal, a person who can work in the United States, or you're born a citizen, you don't get a social.
No,
So
not
that's what
correct.
makes me feel like,
No,
okay, wait a
because when
minute.
you coming
Before I
from the
moved
Europe,
here,
you coming on the visa, and the visa give you the ability that you can work. They give you the social security. You have the visa for work or for the student visa or whatever, it's different kind of visas. So when you get it, the visa, automatically you getting the social security.
Or like me,
dates.
I just wanted to be able to bank. So when I would come back and forth on a visa, I just went and asked them for a social security card and they gave it to me. Back then, the rules have changed now. But there's a lot of people that had it before the rules changed, that are not residents or citizens here.
All right, so we're gonna make all this real easy. Do you have to have a social security number to apply to get a license?
Yes.
Okay, that takes care of that problem. However you got it, you have to have it. And in today's world, and in the environment we live in, with people coming from all over the world, and the universe, I think sometimes,
Get a lot of aliens.
obviously the laws within the state of Florida had to take all of that into consideration. But the reason for the social security number is to catch slouchers. It's not for anything else.
For control.
Well, if you happen to be a spouse who's supposed to be getting paid by the other ex-spouse, and you're not getting paid, this is a nice thing.
Do you want my seat? You sure?
Thank you very much.
Oh, that was
You
so
can have my seat
sweet.
if you want.
What a gentleman. Thank you. No,
Thank you.
thank you.
Chivalry is not dead.
Yeah, thank God.
Thank God for my women.
Good job.
Now, again, looking at page 22, lines 5 through 13. If you're a non-resident, if you become a non-resident, you have to let them know that within 60 days. Later on, you'll see, we'll talk about, when you move within the state of Florida, it's 10 days. And the reason for that is they are responsible for making sure that your contact information is current. So if the state has to contact you for any reason, they have the current. And of course, knowing human beings, if you don't threaten them with their life, they won't do it. And there's also a fine associated with that. Because we know if we hit your pocket, you'll have a tendency to pay more attention, which is sad. It's like when I first started doing the contract compliance and reviewing the files and making sure the agents didn't want to turn them in. We had to resort to holding their commission back until their file was complete. I don't know about you. I want to get paid when? Yesterday. So I'll make dang sure what? My file is complete. Whatever you tell me complete is. I love they argue with me over what they think should be in the file. I feel like saying, I asked you. Now, the 3 paragraphs at the bottom, it actually includes the top of the next page. It talks about mutual recognition agreement. I would like for you to put a star
And highlights.
between lines 30 through 39. If you want to highlight it, you can. But that last paragraph on the page needs to have a star. Just highlight it and put a star beside it. We'll talk about it in a minute.
32 too?
That was 30 through 39, the last paragraph on the page. Now, before we get into this, in the gray box on page 23, it talks about reciprocity, and then it talks about mutual recognition. So we have to understand the difference between those two before we go back and look at what had you highlighted. Start. Is this designed for anyone?
It's
talking to somebody who has a license in another state and you want to reciprocity. Let's say I come from New Jersey, have a license there, but I want to practice down here in Florida. So you're looking for reciprocity.
Now, if I am in New Jersey and I'm an active agent, and I move to Florida, at a certain point, you'll see in a little bit, it's 4 months, consecutively, you're considered a Florida resident, which means now you couldn't use mutual recognition. If she doesn't have any intention of moving to Florida, but at this point, maybe 30 years down the road when she decides to retire, but she wants to have her license. She's got a friend here that's got company. So she can continue to live and work in New Jersey. And then come down here in the winter and work as an agent here.
That is mutual recognition, yes.
Yes. But with the mutual recognition, if I'm in New Jersey and then I move to Florida and I'm here 4 or more consecutive months, I no longer qualify for this. If I'm still residing in New Jersey, and assuming that New Jersey and Florida have mutual recognition, then I could go through the process to get a Florida license.
But if you don't
But
go,
New Jersey has to remain my
Home state.
primary residency, at least until I get the license.
if you go over the 4-month period,
Yep. And the 4-month period is right below that gray box. It says Florida resident defined.
Yeah, you consider to be a resident.
But once you're considered to be a resident, then this don't work.
For 4 months.
Which means you'd have to go through what you're going through right now.
So,
Yes.
the first 4 months if you moved here, the first 4 months you could sell real estate, your license?
No,
You
no,
can't.
you have four, huh?
He's a realtor.
Yeah. No, can't.
That's why he's here.
What state are you from?
New York. No reciprocity.
No mutual recognition. Now, reciprocity means that if you're in good standing in your state, the other state recognizes your license. No tests, no exams, no nothing. You have to pay for the license. A lot of the northeastern states have reciprocity. Florida does not have reciprocity with anybody. Mutual recognition, but no reciprocity.
Also,
She asked the question, my sister is buying a house in New Jersey. I have a license here. I will refer her to an agent in New Jersey. Done every day of the week. Sometimes 100 times a day. Because people constantly do what here, people? Move in, move out.
the reciprocity change was due to the bubble.
There is no reciprocity
No,
in state
that's
law.
why, that's what I'm saying. It's not anymore just because that times where it happened, the bubble, that it was allowed.
It was never something
It
that
has
allowed the
never,
state law.
it has never been.
And the mutual recognition is not that old, maybe 10, 15 years.
That's wrong.
so the mutual recognition, you have to be there for 4 months.
No.
No,
If you live here 4 months, you can't use mutual recognition.
if you go over.
Mutual recognition is for a non-licensed person, or non-resident.
Non-resident.
You have to be a non-resident. Now, understand that 4 months is for 475 and for real estate. It doesn't apply to everything in Florida as to when you're a resident. Reality is, if you move here and your intent is to live here, you are a Florida resident.
If you
When
don't-
I first came down here in the late 70s, I think it was 6 months. And you had to give up your driver's license from the other state.
More like 2 years.
Can I ask a question? What if someone has dual residency, wants a second home, and the primary is, say, California, but they're here probably 4 or 5 months of the year, and they have a license there, and they want to be able to
Use the mutual recognition,
even though
which
they're
doesn't
here,
exist with California.
even if they're going to be here more than 4 months.
Can't do it.
You have to apply too, I guess, for both. You will have to
Maybe you can
have
have as many as you want.
Florida does.
What we're talking about is using mutual recognition to get a license. But if you're coming here to Florida every for 4 to 5 months a year, you're a resident.
both, so you have to apply.
But your primary.
No, don't talk to me about IRS. We ain't talking about IRS. We're talking about 475.
I didn't say anything
We're
about
talking about 475.
No, but it's primary about IRS.
No, primary residence. In California.
I didn't say anything about
You from
You assumed something.
No, I didn't assume anything.
I didn't say anything.
I'm telling you that that 4 months they're talking about here applies only to 475 in real estate. It doesn't apply to anything else. Like I said, in the state of Florida, you're considered a resident in Florida if you come here with your intent to be a resident. But in order for you to not be able to do this anymore, you would have to be here as a resident for 6 months or more. I'm sorry, 4 months or more consecutively.
If you stay for 4 or more months, you have to apply for the license.
Then you have to go through the whole process
The
just
whole
like you're doing
process
now.
and have 2 licenses, one for California, one
Yes.
for here. Okay.
Now, no, I'm not even gonna do that. I'll save that for later. You'll have a history, but I'll do the next one. So I'll save it for a while.
Break question. No,
No time for questions.
Break time.
If I understand the difference between reciprocity and mutual recognition.
Florida said the reciprocity with anything.
Reciprocity means that if I'm in good standing in the state I live in, the other state will recognize my license. That's not the case here. And if you go back to the page where I had you put the star beside of 30 through the end of the page, you have to take a 40-question law exam for that other state. For example, Georgia is one of the states we have mutual recognition with.
Is mutual recognition paid?
Yes. Yeah, you have to understand we're talking about Florida law.
Okay. Do you have to work for the same broker?
What do you mean?
Like Coldwell Banker?
It has nothing to do with who you work with. That doesn't have anything to do with it. How many question exam is it?
100.
How many?
40.
40.
1 point each question.
I don't know, I haven't taken it.
Well, if you try reading the paragraph, that you put a star beside that.
40 questions.
And what score do you have to get?
75.
75. And if you pass, then they will issue a license in Florida.
So you can do this even though you don't come to Florida through you just apply with the states.
But I just did this earlier. You can get a license in Florida and go all the way to having your own broker's license and never set foot in the state of Florida.
You just have to have it active.
Yeah, but acting just means I have to have somebody to put my license with.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, everybody understands that acting doesn't indicate what I'm doing.
Yes.
active indicates that I've got a registered employer, either a broker or an owner developer.
So you don't have to pay it.
No. No. Like I said, never have to set foot in Florida. Not quite sure what movement would be there, but, you know. See, you always have to understand the legality before you worry about the practicality. Because if it makes practical sense, it may still be illegal. But it may be legal, but not make sense. That's the part that always got me. Why the hell would you ever do that? Because the law says you can. Because mom just says you can. It doesn't have to be, make sense. If mom says you can, you can. If mom says you can't, you can.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Okay, let's say I live in Cleveland, and I have someone that I know that wants to buy in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
In order to receive compensation, I have got to take
Well,
the...
stop me and say, you have a license in Ohio?
Yes, let's say I have a license in Ohio.
Then you can do a referral. It's done every day of the week. Absolutely.
That's how you get...
And you know what, send me buyers, send me sellers that are already here that you know. I'll pay you a 25% referral without batting an eye. Because that's one of the things I told you that you need to do.
But if I
You
said-
need to start thinking about where you come from, who the real estate agents were. And get a hold of them.
But then if I move here, I have to take the 40-hour test,
Yes.
40-question test.
No, you're supposed to be a non-resident if you're taking that. Your intent isn't to move to Florida. Your intent is to stay where you are, but be able to do business in Florida because you now have a Florida license. That's the intent of it. Does everybody follow the intent of
But
it?
then you have to go in over the 4 months. And then
No, I don't have to. If I go over the 4 months, I can't do the mutual recognition.
So if you didn't do the 4 months and you became licensed in Florida, but then you moved to Florida and you did do 4
No
months
problem.
and doesn't, it,
No,
does
because it
is
was done before
non-void?
you came to Florida.
I'm sorry, Rita?
I said it was done before you moved to Florida. Which that's what you're talking, I think.
That test is easy to pass or not?
There's no way to study on that.
But you have to study. And then
Georgia law,
Georgia law.
if that's the state that you're going to. We have mutual recognition with, I think, 7 or 8. Georgia, I know is one, Connecticut is another
This is
one.
what I was talking
Uh,
about. California.
Alabama,
No.
and then it's, I don't know, Michigan, Illinois. I think it's Illinois. They're not listed in the book right now, I don't think. They used to be, but they're not. I think that's practically changed. All right, bottom of page 23, top of 24. It talks about the qualifications to become a sales associate, which you already know.
Start?
Hmm?
Start?
No. Do you have to be a college graduate to get a license here?
No.
What if you were denied a license in another state? And you came to Florida and applied for the license? What would most likely happen? And then, what would you do?
Appeal. Yeah, appeal.
I go through that process we talked about a little bit ago, where we have 21 days to respond to the denial, asking for a hearing. part you also know. Let's go over to page 25. On the top of 25, in that gray box, it says license application. Let's highlight the second sentence. Where it says a real estate license application is valid for 2 years from the date the application is received by the department. So that's how long you have to get through this class. And in the gray box at the top of page 25, there are 2 paragraphs. The second paragraph is 2 lines long. I guess it's 3 paragraphs, you want to tell me that.
That is a start, yes?
Yes, the second paragraph is start. First paragraph talks about the Social Security number. And then the bottom, in the middle of the page where it says education requirements, it talks about the stuff that's here. Now, this question, this test is 100 questions, you have to get 70 to pass. The state exam is 100 questions, and you have to get a 75. Between the time that you get your license and your first renewal, there is a 45-hour post-license course that you take, but you only have a class exam, no state exam. And then subsequent renewals is when you do the continuing ed, which is 14 hours. That can be done, we offer here at the school. You can go to different seminars and stuff and accumulate the 14 hours over the 2 years.
Can you do it online?
You can do it online. If I catch any of you doing it online, because you didn't go to a class or come to mine and break your face. I know you're gonna be so busy. I love agents, they got 3 deals going, and they're so busy they can't breathe. You know, and I understood why, because she was at the gym and been there for 2 hours. So she needed help with her transaction. In case you haven't figured it out, this is your business, not mine. If you want me to do your business, guess what?
You get the money.
It ain't free.
Exactly.
Go. Just don't get it. And you know what, if you can't do the paperwork, we got plenty of people here for a few dollars an hour, we're more than glad to do your paperwork. Or, have a little guts, come to class and learn how to do it yourself, keep the money. I like the second one better than the first. Of course, my situation, the wifey's the one that does all the negotiating, and I stay on the way and do the paperwork. Of course, I found after a few years, I realized that made it a whole lot easier. Now, bottom of the page, the gray box, what's the first word?
Regulation.
Okay, who's talking here?
For what?
Who's talking here? Mom,
Yeah.
here's Mom's rules. In regard to getting a license, there's Mom's rules.
Highlight and stuff?
No,
Just bracket?
just know that that's Mom's rules.
No bracket?
No bracket. If you want to put a bracket, it doesn't make scripture. Go right ahead. On the top of page 26, there are two classes of people that are exempt from most of the educational requirements. One is somebody with a 4-year degree, college degree in real estate, or a licensed Florida attorney. Notice it says Florida attorney, it doesn't say attorney. You'll notice that the person that has the most exemptions is not the attorney. It's somebody with a 4-year degree in real estate, which to me makes a lot more sense. That's a divorce attorney there. Nothing know about real estate. He understands law in general, contracts in general, but that's not his field of expertise. That's what always gets me when we deal with our doctors and our attorneys. You expect them to know everything. It's like, well, my heart is hurting, so I'm going to go to my podiatrist and let them, if they're a doctor. Same thing as a real estate agent. You can't be knowledgeable about everything. So the only thing that the 4-year college degree is not exempt from is the continuing ed. But notice that the attorneys are exempt. So basically, they're exempt from FREC 1, and they're exempt from the continuing ed. But the broker's course and post-license, which is either 45 hours or, as you'll see with the broker, 60 hours, they have to take those. Not long ago, I had 2 attorneys in class there. They didn't have to be here, but they knew that their background was not real estate, and they understood that they were taking a test, and I don't think attorneys always agree with the law. Okay? No, they don't, especially if it's not to the benefit of their client. By the way, and I'll explain this to you later, you do not, your buyers and sellers, landlords and tenants are not clients. They're customers. On the bottom of page 26, it talks about the exams. And you'll notice that they do offer the exam in English and Spanish.
You can request.
Even though on line 27, line 16, page 27, line 16, it says qualification of re-examination of a foreign language. No, there's no. You know what? At the top, it's not a star, but at the top where it talks about the 2 exemptions, just highlight it.
On the failure notice, and right, page 26?
On page 26, that figure 2.2, where it talks about.
The attorneys and the,
Yeah.
okay. Highlight.
Highlight, no star. When it comes to the exam, you do not know your score if you pass. So when you open it up, pray you don't see a number. Because that number is going to be somewhere between 0 and 74. what you hope you see when you open it up, it says, congratulations, you passed. So for those of you who have a perfection gene, you need to have medicine or therapy to get rid of it. Because if you think you're going to get 100 on either one of these tests, you're on drugs. Or you're not on the right drugs, maybe. And you know what? Who cares? I don't know the scores I got on the sales exam, or back then, as soon as I got my sales license, I went for the instructor's exam. And amazingly, I passed it. I never took the broker's course, or took the broker's state exam. I didn't take the broker's state exam, I took the broker's course, and also taught it. Then, if you had your sales license, and you either passed the class test or you taught the broker's course, when your year, then it was a year, when your year expired, and you had your experience period, which was a year then, they would issue you a broker's license. And what was funny is I was a public school teacher, and there were probably 10 questions on teaching techniques. I figured I probably missed all 11 of them. Because I haven't found my teaching style in any book I've ever read about education. Now, what we need to take a look at now is, okay, I've been a sales associate, I took my 45 hours, I passed it, I renewed my license the first time, and I decided I want to get my broker's license. I'm not sure I'm going to do anything with it, but I think having it would be a good idea. So the question is, okay, what do I have to do to get a broker's license? Now, the broker's license, you got 72 hours, including the exam. You've got to pass the state exam. You've got 60 hours of post-licensing instead of 45. And then you do continuing education from your second and subsequent renewals. Pretty much the same as FREC 1, just a little different.
The same 14 hours?
Yeah, yeah. The 14-hour course, I've had a room where I've had inactive salespeople, inactive brokers, active brokers, broker associates. Because everybody takes the same material requirement. Because at this point, we're updating you. Well, everybody needs the same updating. What kills me is the people with inactive licenses, there are more of them in the room than somebody with an active license. Which makes absolutely no sense. What do the people who are inactive really need to update? But the people that are out there working every day are the ones that want the class.
Because they're busy.
Forever, if you renew your license in a timely manner and take the education. So you can be inactive for the rest of your life. There is no minimum time period that you have to be active. This means you can't make any money. So it'd be kind of stupid to have an inactive license. Even if you just put it on a referral basis, if you have a company where you can do that. Now, something that's a little different here, at the bottom of 29, line 20, it says broker experience requirements. And that goes through line 15 on the next page.
Hold on, I'm lost.
On line 20, let's put a bracket where it says broker experience requirements. To the bottom of the page, which is 30. Through line 15 on page 30. So on 29, everybody listen, on 29, start with 20, go through 30. And then if you turn the page, the first 15 lines are part of that. All this. Yeah, and then first 15. As a, in order to get my broker's license, how much experience do I have to have as far as working?
2 years.
None.
Oh, no.
I don't have to work. I just have to be employed,
Okay, have the license active
which makes me employed.
for 2 years.
So, the example I gave, my friend who has a brokerage firm here in Florida, and I'm up in Ohio, but I now have met all the requirements to be an active sales associate in Florida, except for the fact that I don't have an employer. So he will register with the department as my employer. And I leave my license with him for 2 years. I have now met the experience requirements, but you realize that's misleading. Because if you were a sales associate and you were doing 2 deals a year, a month, at the end of 2 years you decided you wanted to get your broker's license. All of that makes you active, just like me, where I did what for that 2 years?
Nothing.
Nothing. So is it important to understand that active is not an indication that you're doing anything. Active indicates as a sales associate that you have an employer. That employer does not necessarily have to be a broker.
It could be a developer.
It could be a developer. But here's the catch. The time with the developer doesn't count towards the 2 years. So if you ever went to work for a developer and they also had a brokerage firm, make sure you put your license under the brokerage firm.
So it doesn't, it's not good. to do what it is.
No, if you can work for the developer the rest of your career, it doesn't matter.
So all the deals that come, if you work for a developer, all the deals that come through, you're the one who signed the money, it's yours.
I guess it's the developer, the one that makes the money, and you start.
Well, it's still the developers.
Well, but like you're the one who gets the compensation.
Right.
What is the compensation per year?
50/50 and then 60/40. And then you can-
Whatever your independent contractor agreement says,
What does it usually say here?
whatever your independent contractor's agreement says. Because that's between you and Dan. With Daniel. Can't answer it. Well, it's not that I can't answer. I won't answer. Whatever it is here, there's gonna be a place where it's better. There'll be a bigger split. And the bigger the split, the less money they're gonna spend on you.
Just worry about volume.
So be careful with the grass on the other side of the road.
I'm sure we'll see.
Yeah.
Is it more work to be a broker than a real estate?
Oh, yeah.
Is it what?
Is it more work?
Yeah.
So you have an office.
It's more work from this standpoint. The book is thicker. Exam.
You have to have an office, you have to have insurance.
Yeah, let me ask you, whoa. hold on. If you've got a broker's license, you don't have to do any of the shit you're talking about. All you have to do is put your license, or leave your license with the broker you're with, and keep working.
Oh, yeah, you can do that too. But if you wanna open your own office, you can do it.
Yeah, and hire people in this room,
Yeah.
and be responsible for them.
Yes, liability insurance,
That's why Ben's the broker.
and take her Xanax every day. Yeah.
But you realize I'm the first one that really gets a good look at you.
Are you the one that signs the commission check?
Do I send you a commission check? No, Joanne does.
But he.
I close your file, so she will send you the check.
He makes sure that it's complete.
Yeah, and if it's not, you don't get paid.
Point taken.
Not a problem.
So why,
Nothing like that ultimate power, is it? Okay, let's.
Ultimate power corrupt.
Now, here's the catch. I've been an agent, an active sales associate in Montana for the last 15 years. When I get to Florida, I have my 2 years in. Because if you look at your notes, it doesn't say that it has to be with a Florida broker. So that means I could take the broker's course, skip from FREC 1 and post license and all that. I could take the broker's course and become a broker here. I find that probably 90% of the people that come into that take one look at that broker's course and say, I don't really need to be a broker. Although I like the broker's course. It takes you to the level that the typical agent is not at. And a lot of people, for me, I'm never gonna open my own office. I've seen what it's like in the office I worked in and what the broker had to deal with. There's no way I would take all that on. But that's not why you get the license. I'm in the middle of my listing presentation. And I'm talking about my credentials. Why should you hire me? Well, I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't have broker licenses, even broker licenses, compared to those that have inactive license and sales associates. I said, one of the other things, if you hire me, is this fact. I have, in the last year, taken 72 hours of my time, plus studying, plus taking exams, to obtain my broker's license, to become more knowledge of my profession, thereby being able to provide you a higher level of service.
That's a great answer.
That's why you get a broker's license. Because it gives you that little bit of something extra. That could be what they, the icebreaker there. Yes.
but just a little bit? I mean, you have a broker's license,
A lot.
the commission should be, or the compensation should be different, right?
Wrong. Because you can have a broker's license being doing 3 or 4 deals a year. Guess what? You're not gonna get paid. Because ultimately, it's not the license that you have in your hands that determines whether Ben's gonna pay you more money. It's how much money you're putting on his desk. And the more money you put on his desk, the more likely it is that he'll pay you a higher percentage of it. You have to do shit if you want money. I know other agents. I need a bigger split. I need more money. Get your ass up off the chair and go talk to people and sell some houses or list some, and you don't need a higher split. Your split will be more than high enough. I love it when I hear agents say something like that. Like getting a higher commission rate is gonna make them more productive when they haven't sold anything in the last 6 months. I've already given you the key to jumpstart your career. How many of you are working on your list? so we know how many people are gonna have a career. How many of you are working, how many of you are working on your list? How many people do you have on your list?
Probably a dozen.
He has a list already.
You gotta be kidding me.
52.
52?
Several.
Yeah. Very long.
And I also have my clients for remodeling houses also.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother book.
Yep.
I have a lot of Christmas cards to send out this year.
Now, for those of you that haven't started your list, and how many of you have told everybody you know that you're getting a license? Those that you haven't, somebody's gonna be spending your commissions. And it's not gonna be
Me.
you. And I know why a lot of you who didn't tell them yet, didn't tell them. I'm not telling them until I would. Until I finish. I'm not telling
I
them.
told him so.
And I will deny that I'm taking the course if you ask. Wasn't that a little secret? It's not gonna kill you. You're not gonna be the first person, and you're definitely not gonna be the last. So I focus on studying the material and not worrying about whether I'm gonna pass or not. Because I will tell you this much, at a certain point in this class, you're gonna decide that there's no way, and you know what, that I'm ever gonna pass this test. The sooner you get that over with, the happier I'll be. Because then you get to a certain point where you don't care anymore. It's too much stress, I just don't care anymore. And once you get to that level, everything's fine. At the bottom of page 31, you'll see two big terms: registration and licensure. On line 30, which is right below it, highlight that line because it defines what registration means. I'm on page 30. I'm on line 30. Where it says the word registration, it gives you a definition. Yes?
Start?
No. Hold on, that's not what you said. I'll have to, I don't have it more books. I'll speak to Lisa in the morning, figure out what we're gonna do. On, on page 31, line 6. Seven and the beginning of 8. They talk about licensure. 31.
6, 7, 8.
Highlight. Because I'm drawing a contrast between registration and licensure. I guarantee you, if you go into the Google and Google the word licensure, you may have a little problem figuring out what it is. Because there's a lot of terms here that are not. What do you get first? Registration or licensure?
Registration.
When will you qualify for licensure? You pass the state exam. Good. If I showed you my real estate license, would it mean that I was an active agent? Would it mean I was inactive? So, but on the surface, does it appear that I'm an active agent? If everything on the license appears that I am licensed? That's what they mean by prima facie. It appears on the face to be a valid license. You don't know that I was revoked yesterday.
So what is, I'm sorry, that is the prima facie, how do you pronounce it?
Prima facie.
That is
It basically means on the face of it, on the surface of it. Anybody else that hasn't signed?
Is that significant for something?
What?
Prima facie?
The purpose of it is to make sure that you understand that just because the license looks like it's valid doesn't necessarily mean it is.
Okay.
And that's why you don't even want to look at their license. You'll go on the website and look them up.
Well, but in here it says, for example, expiration date, that would tell you, but it doesn't mean that it's active because you don't know if that person is working under a broker.
Right. You also don't know that that license is actually valid. They could have, been revoked or suspended. Well, like, you get suspended with your driver's license, you still have your license, but you can't use it. Well, you're not supposed to. Now, finally, we get to real estate services on page 32.
Do you want us to do anything with prima facie?
No. On page 32 in the middle of the page, there's your 8 services of real estate. I would suggest that you learn them. But you'll probably never be given a question like this. Which of the following is one of the 8 services of real estate? What they're going to have is they're going to have a question where a licensee is performing one of those services. And you'll have to figure out if they're doing it right or wrong. Well, if I don't know what they can do, I sure don't know what they can't do.
They are not in order, are they?
Hmm?
Are they in order? No.
A notary?
Order.
In order.
Oh, in order? They're only in the order they're in for the acronym, for the A-bar sale. That's the only reason it's in that order.
Okay.
I have a question for you. What's the difference between buy and sell?
Buy is when you are acquiring.
Remember who you are.
I'm the realtor?
You represent.
If you're the realtor, what you're about to say.
You're representing the buyer.
Huh?
You're representing the buyer.
I'm representing the buyer, so then selling means?
Then you're representing the seller.
Okay, then what's the difference between rent and lease?
Rent.
You still rent.
If you're representing the person who wants to rent the house.
No. And not what person, yes, the tenant, the person who wants to rent the house, okay.
Or the person that
And
lease
then
it.
lease,
For when the person
The
that
That's the
person-
landlord.
Landlord.
the reason they did that is, if they hadn't have done that, and let's say they just had buy and didn't have sell, which means if I was helping someone buy a house and getting paid, I'd have to have a license. But if I was listing their house for sale, so that's why they have to have both sides of the coin. So whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, or the landlord or the tenant, or any combination thereof, you need a license.
How would you do the auction and exchange?
Good question.
Say that again.
How would you do the auction and exchange as a real estate?
The auction and exchange, you don't have that relationship like you do in the others. An auction means that people will be bidding on it. An exchange is, I have a warehouse and you have an office building, and we want to exchange ownership of those properties.
Do you know when do that for equal trade?
No, you might face taxation because your equities don't equal out.
Can you do a 1035 exchange on real estate?
A what?
1035 exchange for real estate.
It's 1031.
1031.
Well.
1031, yes.
Okay. That's security.
Well, see, in 1031, as the seller, you can't touch that money, so you have to have an intermediary pass that money along. And you have a certain amount of time to locate and buy a property. So the idea is to absorb all the profit.
Who is the intermediary in that case?
Huh?
Who is the intermediary?
Could be a bank,
Huh?
could be a bank, could be an attorney.
Exchange involves not only swapping of properties, but can involve also money, right?
Right. Absolutely. At the bottom of the page, lines 5 through 13,
Which page?
32,
32?
32,
Okay.
lines 5 through 13,
You bracket?
put a bracket around it. On the top of the next page, a bracket around lines 1 through 10. And I want you to highlight lines 1 through 6. Yeah. I'll highlight the first paragraph on page 33. Yes.
Does this mean if I put a seller and a buyer together and, you know, they buy the house and I want to give them a gift, a housewarming gift, I'm not allowed
You
to?
can't give them
You can.
Nothing, huh? Not even a card?
not even a chocolate.
You can't get
I'll address that issue a little later. But I will say this first. 60J2 paragraph, 6J2, 10.025 paragraph 2 would answer that question. come back to it. All right, I have a scenario. I am a real estate investor. I do not have a license. My neighbor is a roofing contractor. My neighbor and I were talking, and he said that he was looking to sell his home, but he didn't want to list it with a real estate agent. Can't stand real estate agents. He said, I know that you do a lot of investing, buying and selling. Would you mind help me selling my property? I said, no problem. He said, and I said, okay, how much you want for it? He says, well, I need 300,000, and I want to have a 30-day closing. I said, okay, I'll help you with that. He says, I'll put a new roof on your house for helping me sell it. Question isn't over yet. I wound up selling the house for $350,000 in 10 days.
Wow.
Told you I was good.
Sounds like it.
But that sucker moved away and never put a roof on my house. Based upon the information given, has the law been violated?
No.
No.
How many of you say no? The law has not been violated. How many of you say yes, it has?
No, you can have verbal agreements, verbal contracts in Florida. So it's, yeah, it's violated.
How many of you say it's a violation?
I'll say no.
No, it's not.
Now, before you start running your mouth, and me sticking my foot down it, I want you to read the definition of compensation. Read it this time. Don't skim it. It's on the first paragraph of that page. It's highlighted.
Has to be licensed. The license.
It's like expected.
Anything.
Did you receive any images?
So even if it's expected.
Was promised. What promise?
Yeah, he's not licensed.
So yes.
Is a promise to pay considered compensation?
No.
Yes.
It
Yes.
says
Yes.
expected.
Anybody that opens their mouth, I'm gonna throw a eraser at you. Turn these on for a second, and the thing in front of your mouth, face, close it. Listen, compensation is defined as anything of value
You didn't do it.
or valuable consideration, directly or indirectly paid, promised, or expected to be paid or received. Was it promised?
Yes.
Verbal agreement.
Then it's over. The minute that owner promised the other guy to pay him to put a roof on his house, law been violated.
But he wasn't licensed. The guy that was supposed to.
That's why it was a violation.
Violated.
Ah.
If he was licensed, it wouldn't be a problem.
If it was licensed, you can sell houses all day.
With the roof.
With the roof,
Ah, okay,
yeah.
yeah, so he was the one that violated, okay.
See, compensation and commission are not synonyms. Compensation or commission is one form of
Compensation.
compensation.
When I was a kid, I used to shovel snow.
I could sit here for a half an hour and give you scenarios. How about this one? My grandmother, who lives on the ocean, okay, we'll see. If I agreed to help my grandmother sell her place, am I violating law?
Not if grandma doesn't give you dinner or anything, and you don't get promised anything out of it.
If you're not getting any compensation.
if I agreed, I'm not licensed, my grandmother's not licensed, if I agreed to help my grandmother sell her place, have I violated the law?
No.
No.
Yes, you agreed to help her sell her place.
No.
Are you going your grandmother to someone that is licensed?
No.
So the person that buys his.
See, here's where my problem is. I can't stop you from adding to my question. You're not just answering my question, you're giving me a damn dissertation of the information. This is not an essay test. This is a multiple choice, or guess, or something. So the answer to that question was yes or no?
Yes.
Why? Because there was no indication of compensation.
So it's like being.
What grandma says, I'll take you out to dinner? How about if she says she'll give me a candy bar?
I have a basic question. If you're not licensed, how do you affect a sale? How do you make it happen?
Find the buyer.
I know people.
No people.
I know people. I know a lot of people with money.
Yeah.
And so I just spread the word around.
No, but don't you have to register it and officially,
Register it where?
the transfer of the deed?
Oh, I've got a company that does all that closing stuff for me.
Lawyers?
I have an attorney that does the contract for me. The attorney also owns the title company. But that's not what this class is about. This class is about you being a real estate agent. Now it's done.
This time I passed. I knew it was left. And I was reading these things.
He was wrong.
And there's no compensation for either one, which is okay. But the minute someone is in real estate, is compensated, and if grandma wants to sell the house, and I work for a real estate company, you know, I'm gonna get compensated, or if you make a side agreement, let's see, I don't know about that, you make a side agreement, I'm not gonna take it, into the store, but I don't know how that.
I don't think.
I have to go to party, I'll be back.
So I guess in that question, there's, what I understood there is, if he facilitates the process of finding who is gonna buy her house, that is helping her.
Right.
But it's not that he is.
Getting it compensated.
Exactly, it's just a favor.
Right.
Like I leave you with the person that's gonna help you.
But if you.
But then if it's compensation, then it's not possible because he doesn't have a license.
Right. At least that's what I heard.
I'll come by on my way home. I'll come by and I'll help you sort it out. I have connections if you need somebody. I have somebody that'll take care of you. I used to sell exotics, but I mean, I have friends that sell Dodge. I have friends that work at Chrysler, Chevy. I have friends everywhere. Lexus. I don't have a friend that works at Lexus, but I have a buddy that owns a Lexus, and he's a car salesman, so he's really close with like the finance managers at Lexus and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'll give you his number. He's a sergeant in the military. I call him Sergeant Jeremy, so he's a pretty cool guy. Yeah. Really
But I really want to quit my job. Oh, sorry.
But I have a license. You have to? Oh, okay. I have a license. I think that's everything. I was working with 1 month. Uh-oh. Depends if you have a patient. Yeah, but I want to be fighting agency. I don't want to have more than one. The thing is that I'm signed up to the agency. Okay. And they see there's so many different people. So I feel I cannot do it. Recently I have like 4 hours in the boat. I have to go like another 4 hours to West Palm Beach. The same day? Yes. No, I feel I cannot do it. It was really like a week. No. There are times, the timing, because I can come to Boca, but I'm not going to go to Travis and coming back to, because my daughter goes to school in Boca. I had to go. So, how was it? She's 10. Yeah. I will let her know. So, I just I work with her now. She's the artist. She's painter. So, she's, right now I have a job, but I don't know how much. So, that's what I'm saying. It's an odd. So, he told me to go with this one, but maybe, yeah. So, it's gonna be more than that. Buying some houses from some of them. Yeah, on the media. By myself, probably not. Yeah. This is so thrilling. What do you pass? You don't pass, you don't pass. This is what I did. Yes.
It's gonna be a question yes or no, or is it multiple question?
Then you know you get rid of that.
So she did the class too.
It's really hard.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you. I love that. I can't do a break. Oh, somebody in I work in Boca. Oh, like height, okay. I have bonds to municipals and stuff like that invested in IRS. I do, I'm actually an auditor, but I audit government. Like private districts. Right. So all of my clients have been through but so I audit like the city of Weston and Village of Wellington. How are you Lauderdale? I was in California when California was bankrupt. Yeah, no, I used to start in planning. Right. Yeah. Well, I just think any, I don't think I think all the sector was a shame, but I think that how healing possibly be overfunded, like so many people, right? Like it's just they never are. They're never funded in areas. Even people like us, get them to start investing in right. But I don't think people, it's not that's enough as a rule. Like, I mean, I can retire tons of real estate. Because I always know when I retire early, my mom was like, sure. And even when I notice all the money, and it's like, why are you not maxing out everything you have? I educate a lot of administrators that make over election. Most of them don't realize that they are already 20 years into right. Yeah. And to be honest, at first I was listening, but then I see the reality of raising kids and different houses.
You gotta do like
You gotta send your file, you gotta like a belief.
never alive with it.
Yeah, but yeah.
Right, well, and when you have two incomes, it's a little different. Well, one income, right.
But he had a trust fund, so what we were going to do was 20 years older than us. He was a trust fund baby, so what I strategized was I'll stop working at 50 and we live on your trust fund until I get to 60. So I'm going to make it
The thing is, even if you want to go to the they cannot buy it. Right.
I was really conscious, I was gonna let my stuff and just leave it and then I could consult with 24 today, so. And then I was very concerned when you
Right, so try to save some, try to save.
So now, I've been home for 3 years and it's time to go back out. I realized I was in my analysis and I'm 6 quarters short of being fully insured for total disability. I'm fully insured for Social Security.
That's if you sell it yourself.
Right.
I mean, if you're gonna list a rent,
Absolutely.
And my clients are telling me,
you might have this movement somewhere, so it's 2,000.
Okay, let's continue.
I don't have any questions yet because I'm still trying to figure out where I'm gonna land. In fact, I was trying to talk to, the only So I'll see how it goes. Yeah, that'll be good. But I have a CP that's been some 29 years, you know.
Okay, on page 33, line 11 through 23. It says here, if an individual performs services of real estate for another, and a disciplinary case is filed as a result of that activity, there is a presumption that the individual is acting as a real estate licensee. Even if the individual attempts to perform a real estate service for another without being compensated for the service, the individual may be held liable. If an individual has sold or leased real estate that is not titled in his name, or has maintained an office bearing signs that real estate is for sale or lease, or has advertised real estate for sale or lease, there is a presumption that the individual is acting or attempting to act as a real estate broker. The burden of proof should be upon the individual to show that he is not acting or attempting to act as a real estate broker or sales associate. Unlicensed individuals may find themselves facing charges of unlicensed activity, which is a third-degree felony. I think third-degree felony is $5,000 fine, 5 years in jail.
Wow.
You'd be in a good job.
And what's interesting with that statement's probably not more than 10 to 15 years old. Initially, when I started, there was nothing in the law that said that there was nothing in the law that allowed the commission to discipline somebody performing the 8 services of real estate without a license, which obviously made absolutely no sense. But see, that person doesn't actually fall under FREC's domain. But it does fall under the department's domain. So it would really be the department that would go after them, not the commission. Yes?
Does it apply if you have power of attorney for a third party? And
No, because then you have the authority to act for that
You just
individual.
had me so worried.
No.
Okay.
You've got the power of attorney, then you can sign contracts and do whatever that power of attorney allows you.
Because I advocate for people.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, you wouldn't presume that you were a broker because you told me that you had the power of attorney. What this is saying is if you don't say anything or don't indicate what you are or what you see makes you look like a broker, then you're presumed to be one. But see, a person would only know that if they went to real estate class. Or they went to some course that, taught the law. But most of the real estate courses out there don't teach the law. They teach you how to make money for them. Now, here's my favorite thing about regulatory law. Regulatory law is very broad. And if you will notice, starting on page 33, just where we left off, line 24. Put a bracket from there to the bottom of the page, and all of the next page. There is a page and a half of people who can perform the services of real estate without a license. Which makes absolutely no sense. I'll give you a little hint. If the compensation is the commission percentage, or if it is money given specifically for that transaction, that would be considered compensation that would require a license. Now, one exception to that we know right off the bat. If I work for the owner developer, I don't have to have a license. The part that I didn't bring up is you don't have to have a license to get paid salary. But you can't get paid a commission and you can't get paid per transaction. Can't. Unless you have a license. When you look at all these, especially the first two groups, it says a sales associate is a person who performs real estate services for compensation or other consideration, but does so under the direction, control, management. How much the bottom of 35 reading the first one? Two.
Oh, yes, I'm ready. Okay, yes.
So we need to put a bracket? A bracket?
Yeah, there's supposed to be a bracket. No, you know what? I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. I need to be on page 33.
Yeah.
You may already be there, but unfortunately I wasn't. Now, the first thing it says, individuals who buy, sell, exchange, or lease property for? Which means they're not by buying and selling, not brokering. Brokering means to deal for others for compensation.
So basically, you could flip houses without a real estate license.
Is it your property?
Yeah.
Okay. The only people you gotta worry about there would be your friends at IRS.
Yeah.
Sorry. They'll send me a letter.
Yeah. Yeah, when you turn, you just send one back.
Hey, look, guys, we're working a deal here.
You mean if you have a real estate license,
No, I don't have to have a real estate license to do what I just read.
but if you have a real estate license
Yeah.
and you sell your house, you're indebted to the broker or yourself or who?
Nobody.
Nobody?
Because if you own it, you can sell it and keep it.
No.
Unless you owe the bank.
You know what? Do me a favor. I get paid big bucks for answering these questions. Now, repeat the question.
Okay, I'm a licensed real estate agent and I want to sell my house.
Okay.
Do I have to go through my broker or can I do it is, you wanna buy my house, but I'm a
You're licensed
real
agent.
estate agent.
Mhm.
So,
Sounds like.
so do we just buy and sell
No, you have to.
separately, or do I do it through my broker? I'm
2 years.
licensed, so it puts me in a different category.
Are you in your 2-year contract?
Everybody ready? Okay. Number one, everything I do, if I have a license, is under the supervision of my broker. Your question about how's it work and who gets the money, and the answer is the same answer I gave before. That person didn't like that answer either. What's your independent contractors agreement say? That's part of what you and Ben or Damien will work through as far as, you know, when you sell your own. We do have something called special circumstance. If you've done business, you get a freebie once a year, meaning that you get to keep your commission and you get to keep the company's portion of the commission. Now, notice there was a prerequisite to being able to do that. I love the agents of company, it's their first deal, it's their own home. And they want the company to waive the commission. So you've done absolutely nothing for us. And you want me as the broker to give you all of my money. Somehow I have from a business perspective, I have a problem with that. But the answer to your question about that is whatever you and Ben agree to, or the broker, whatever broker. Yes, ma'am.
So she, as a real estate agent, she cannot say, I'm selling this house by owner?
Yeah. You just have to disclose prior to meaningful negotiation that you have a real estate license. What I do is, I put it under additional terms, indicating that that the buyer, if I'm buying, that the buyer is a licensed real estate broker.
Can you get the commission that on the deal of your house, put in toward the closing cost of
Yes.
the house?
That's a good question.
Yep. When my daughter bought her home, I sold her, or other when she bought a different, so I got a commission of the first sale, which I pulled back in as monies towards closing costs and prepays. And then in the purchase of the other one, we had another commission. That money was given to her and to her husband.
Down payment?
Not as a down payment,
No.
as a credit from the agent for closing costs and prepays.
Oh.
That's the way they like to have it worked.
And I heard that you can just do 5,500, is that true?
What?
That the commission that you put into the closing cost has a max of
Depends on the
5,000.
type of loan that you're doing.
If it's a conventional,
Conventional, well, I will tell you that when I put in there, it was a whole lot more,
than 5,000.
a whole lot more.
Well, but, okay, I just want to be clear before we move on. I sell my house, I work for Ben, I tell them I'm a real estate person, I'm more than happy to do this, but there is a commission that will be going to my broker, period, and whatever we decide. Okay, so from now on, if I pass this test, I must disclose that I'm a realtor, in real estate.
See, that's why I'm
Always.
confused. 'cause it's
Always.
really-
Always,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't get it.
Why? Because you can take advantage of that poor, innocent public who doesn't know the rules. That's why. Remember, people, you put a license in your hand, you just became an instant expert. Everything you say and do, should have said or should have done, can and will be held against you. You are not the public anymore, and you gotta stop thinking like one. Totally different world. We're held to a higher standard as agents. Yes.
If I sell a house, if I own a house here and I want to sell it, and I'm a realtor for Signature, do I have to even tell them that I'm selling my house, or I'm not obligated to? If I'm going to
Tell
a FISBO? I don't have to tell Signature that I have a house for sale,
If you're gonna sell it by yourself.
if I'm going to sell it for sale by owner.
If it's her personal
If I'm
property.
gonna sell my
she-
property, do I have to let the realtor that I work for know that I'm selling my property by owner?
If you were the realtor, knowing that you're responsible for that transaction, would you wanna know?
But they're not. Because
They're
you're
not
selling on your
responsible, I'm
own.
selling on my own.
You didn't hear what I said. You are a real estate licensee, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days in a year. If you screw up selling your own house on your own, Ben is responsible for you.
Because you're under him.
Because you are under him.
But it's not listed.
It doesn't matter, but your license is under his umbrella.
It doesn't matter.
It
Right.
matters.
It doesn't matter.
So I don't have to tell them.
Yeah, you have to tell
You
them.
do have to tell.
Well, in New York, I just did it in.
Well, I have a little surprise for you. You're not New York anymore.
Welcome to the Sunshine State. Sorry, at least taxes.
Again, the reasoning for it, listen, I don't want to discuss this anymore. There ain't no talk. As a broker, I'm responsible for any and all transactions that you are involved in. I don't care if it's through the company or if it's a FISBO. I, as the broker, am responsible for every one of those transactions. I'm responsible for that file. I need that file in our files. Because what happens if I don't have that file and you get sued? Because what you did, I have no knowledge and no documentation of that transaction, yet I'm responsible for your actions.
Well, why are you responsible if I didn't list it with you? I don't get it.
Because you are getting.
Let me ask a question. When you were doing this by yourself, were you still listed with us?
Yes.
What do you mean listed? Listed
No.
or working?
No, it wasn't listed. The house wasn't listed with the agency I work with.
But while you were doing your little thing with your own little house,
Yeah.
was your license in DPR's records
Yeah.
under
Yes,
Ben?
yes.
So it's okay for you to do whatever you feel like when it's your own, even though if you screw up, Ben could get in trouble. Makes sense to me. About that long.
You're right.
That's why I asked everybody. Because in New York, it's
See, I love that. I had a one-week class one time. I had 5 agents from Massachusetts. Seriously, 5 agents from Massachusetts. They spent the whole week arguing with each other over what Massachusetts law said. I finally said, nobody in this room gives a shit what they do in Massachusetts.
I'm just thinking if I'm gonna sell my house now, I gotta think about that.
But you know what? The conversation we just had was an important one.
Yes.
It may be fun and games, but it's an important one because the rules of the game aren't the same in every
said he
state.
screwed up.
Only
You said you're right, he screwed up.
You might as well be your
I
own
didn't,
realtor.
I didn't tell my broker that I was selling my house. Matter of fact, I moved it, I didn't tell him. But that's neither here nor there.
Remember now, we're on camera.
And I still have my license there, and I am gonna sell under
Yes,
yours
ma'am.
as well.
If I die and I have a house in trust for my child, that has nothing to do with real estate, right?
Yeah, has everything to do with real estate.
Because you're moving.
Because when I fill out that listing agreement, or I fill out that sales contract, I gotta know who the hell owns this house now. So if it's a trust, I need a copy of the trust.
I live in a house that's owned by a trust.
If there's no will and no trust, I probably got probate on my hands.
2 years, yeah.
We have a chapter 8 on estates. And everybody always says, what the hell do I need to know about estates? Shows you. Because every time you do a transaction, you have to verify ownership. And when you get in these 55+ communities, you've got all kinds of different things going on in there. Now, this is not the time and place to discuss that. We got a whole chapter on it, so I don't want to get into it. Let's get back to this. We're on page 33. I don't know how we're going to get up on all these pages. Now, these first 3 bullets talk about the owner, whether it be an individual or a group of people or an LLC. The owner of the property is buy, selling, or leasing. That is totally legal. Notice in 3, on the second bullet, which starts in line 30, I'm still on 33.
The second bullet.
I'm on the second bullet that starts out with corporation. If I work for that corporation, that might be a developer, for example, I can get paid what?
Salary.
Salary. Can I get paid per transaction?
No. Oh, well, you could, but under the salary form, no commission form.
Salary and per transaction don't sound the same to me.
Okay.
Because it would have to say salary and or.
Could be volume, volume could be.
No, because volume equals to commission. You're asking the same question.
So that means that you're gonna have a fixed salary no matter how many you sell.
If you work for that company and you sell 40 million in houses, you're only gonna make 2 million if that's your salary. You don't get
Okay, so
compensated
you
by
just
how
make
much
your
you sell.
salary,
Yeah.
doesn't matter your.
If you
your
sell
sub-
under 40 million the next year, you're still gonna get 2 million because that's what they promised you as a salary.
Okay, I got it.
Get this damn class, where's that job?
You guys just gotta be quiet with kickbacks.
I'll go work for that developer.
Now, you do know I'm making mental notes here, right? Now, here's something you have to be careful of, and it's the third bullet, line 35. If you had, say, 3 people in a partnership, and let's assume for illustrations, 33, 33, 33 is their ownership share. They want to sell one of their properties, but 2 of them are busy. And ask the third person if they can take care of it. And the person did such a good job and got him a nice profit, they agreed to give him 50% of the profit and they'll split the other 50. Is that legal?
No.
Answer is no.
No.
You cannot take more than your proportionate share of
The property.
the property, or you can't even pay the commission. You're being compensated for helping them sell their part.
Can they go under the table and say? Listen. Listen, it's important. No, but can they say, listen, we give you $3,000.
Wait a minute, you can stop right now. You stop right now.
Uh-huh.
Next time you say under the table, you're gonna be out the door, number one.
No,
And
no,
number
no,
two,
no,
and number two, the answer is salary. Discussion is over.
No, I'm not talking about the salary, I'm talking about the 33.
Right?
Because he worked so hard and the other ones didn't do anything.
Well, I tell you
Can
what, you're a nice person, but do me a favor, read the third bullet before you become a nice person. What's Mom saying?
Yeah, just 33.
But the reasoning for that, people, is you can't take more profit than you have in ownership. And if your ownership is 50%, you can't take more profit than 56%, because anything over that would be considered compensation being received from the other partners.
Or just do 63 hours and get your license. You can make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that resolves a lot of the problem if you got the license.
So that guy did that just because he's nice. He did all the work
Because he don't have
and nobody's gonna even invite him to lunch.
Do me a favor, okay? I'll agree with you if in that paragraph you can show me the word nice.
But, I mean, it's just he's doing any good.
In business, there's no such thing as nice. It's all about money and who wins.
Yeah, but exactly, but he's doing
No,
all the
no,
job.
it's about doing it legally.
Yeah.
And who gets the money and wins.
But he's doing everything, so.
Not under the table, you're not doing things legally.
There's ethics.
Yeah, I
There
guess.
to ethics.
I guess he chooses.
People, there is no ethics on these 2 pages. This is Mom talking. And Mom says you can do it this way, and that's it. Does it make sense? Nobody asked you. And nobody cares what your opinion is. You know what? It took me a long time to figure out that Mom didn't give a shit about my opinion. You know how many times I called Orlando in the first 2 years I was licensed? Because I didn't like the stuff. It finally dawned on me that somebody died and left their boss. And whatever they tell me I do, the best thing to do is what? Do it. Do it. I will tell you, there's still stuff in this book, you'll never know what it is, that I don't get. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But I learned a long time ago that regulatory law does not have to be logical. And Mom, let me have you, think about your mom. Your mom wasn't logical. Your mom was black and white. Or you were dead on the floor, one of the two. I love using that illustration because that visualization really gets the idea of regulatory law. Somebody was given the authority to make the rules. You don't like the rules, go play someplace else. Don't ask me why. Because they said so. Sometimes I can give you a reason for it, because I know the history of it. Other times there are things that have been on the books forever, I don't think even they have a clue why it's there. They know it's there, and they know that you have to abide by it, but they may not have a clue why it's there, and it doesn't matter. All right. The next section says, at line 39, I'm still on 33. Also exempt from real estate licensure are, and what's it say?
Salary.
Employees. No per transaction, no percentages. The first one is working on site as a rental agent. Because they are performing one of the 8 services of real estate. But as long as they're working for the owner and they're getting paid a salary, it's legal. The next one is managers of condominiums.
Oh, so those are the companies that are hired by the owner of the property to maintain it?
See, they are performing the 8 services of real estate. But the deal here is, as long as they don't get paid anything above their salary, they can lease out units for the owners, which they do. What they have to have is a CAM license, C-A-M, which stands for Community Association Manager.
So those are
They have that license.
Oh, I get it. So those are basically the people that sit inside of like any apartment complex, and they're just like, oh,
No, not necessarily. It has to be a homeowners association or a condominium association.
Okay, alright,
If it's an apartment complex, that backs us up to the one before.
alright, no problem. I get it.
Top of the next page. The first bullet's on line 3, it says owner developer, we already know that. It says that provided they do not receive a commission or per transaction. I want you to add that to that. The one where it talks about the fact that you can work for the developer on a salary basis, but that you can't have commission, or per transaction, because per transaction is commission. Just another way of trying to describe it.
Or,
You know, on line 4, where it says they do not receive a commission or per transaction. The next one on line 5 is a government agency. Good example of that one would be HUD. Because they have people that work for them to help dispose of the properties that they have foreclosed on. But they work on a salary basis. Interesting, working for HUD like that counts towards your 2 years to get your broker's license.
But you don't have a license for real estate?
No, you wouldn't have to have a license, but if you did, it would count towards the 2 years.
Oh, okay, I get it.
If you didn't have a license to start with, you know.
Like you said before, it's like if you had a license and you worked for a builder, it wouldn't count, but
No.
working for HUD, it counts.
Yeah.
Alright,
Makes sense.
yeah.
So HUD have all the foreclosure homes?
FHAB, line 8 is business entities who negotiate the sale or purchase of radio, television, and cable. Because they get involved in a lot of leasing, and my brother-in-law works for them, for T-Mobile.
So that's like getting a warehouse for a week
Mm-hmm.
for filming a movie or something?
Yeah. Something that we're really never gonna get involved in.
Yeah.
All right, the rest of this page, it says chapter 475 of Florida statutes exempts the following individuals from holding a real estate license. Now, that means if I went to 475, I could read all these things. They're in 475. The first one, we talked about the first one, cemetery lots. Why? Because they're not considered real property. Therefore, I don't need a real estate license. I was gonna do that there before and decided not to, yes.
How would you get power of attorney? Like, how would you really like instill that? Where would that come in?
Sorry.
Um,
Where would it come in? I've got someone who has been, you've got a son and a mother. The mother is being placed into assisted living. And her son is taking care of her finances and whatever else. That would be a situation where
Power of attorney puts me.
power of attorney could come into play.
Okay.
That's probably one of the best examples here, given the type of communities that we have.
Thanks.
And if they have a power of attorney, I want to see the paperwork. If they tell me they are the trustee of the trust, I want to see the trust.
And you're gonna make copies of that, right?
I'm gonna make copies of that, I'm gonna run it by the title company.
Okay.
See, even if I'm 99% sure I'm cool with what I'm reading,
Well, everything
I
before-
still run it past the title company.
I've seen fake $100 bills
Yeah.
that are real.
Yeah,
How would the title company know the trust is valid?
because it'll be recorded.
Or trust to report it?
Yeah. Look,
So
it's
they
like
do have a way.
4 times.
Line 16 talks about mobile home parks and travel parks. What's the key word in that statement?
Travel.
Rent.
What? Rent. Who said rent?
Oh,
Rent is the key word. Because what are they gonna change if they change it in the question? They're gonna change it to sell.
Lease.
But it's not an exemption to sell. It's an exemption to be able to lease. Attorney at law. Now, everybody understands that in Florida, an attorney at law is not recognized as a real estate broker.
Correct.
But they're allowed to be involved in real estate transactions, for example, right off the bat, drawing up the contract. So they're involved in a lot of ways. We do closings. But those type of services are something that their license allows them to do. So there's no violation of 475. CPAs. You're selling a $30 million building. Do you think that the buyer might want to send their CPAs in to check the books out?
Yeah.
Well, then that means that CPA is involved in a real estate transaction. But they're being compensated, not for a real estate agent, they're being compensated
CPA.
for CPA
or
work.
their service.
Even though it's involved in a real estate transaction, they're not getting compensation out of the sale of the property.
Can you take over that as long as you're a CPA and a realtor? Can you take care of it?
You have to be careful because it could be considered a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
Oh, meaning you're in on it?
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
get out from under the table.
Yeah.
Lines 22, 23, and 24 have a star. Yeah, wake up.
Does that sentence mean that the person given the power of attorney cannot ask another power of attorney to conduct? I don't understand that last sentence. A person cannot appoint. What are you referring to?
It says that the person cannot appoint another individual as a attorney, in fact, if for the purpose of conducting real estate services for others.
You just can't have one.
So if you're appointed power of attorney, you can't turn around and appoint someone else to handle it. Is that what that means?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
That will make your attorney not really like you.
No, it has nothing to do with it. If you're given a power,
Power to somebody.
attorney, in fact, you have the power, your children have given you the power of attorney to sign off on transaction, real estate
Right.
transaction,
Right.
whether it be a mortgage or anything like that. So when you fill it out, you actually fill it out, attorney, in fact, and then the name of that child.
Right.
And to be removed, you have to resign as an attorney in fact, to have another person to
Right,
represent
exactly.
you as a lawyer. So it's a process.
All right, the next one is owners of timeshare that own and use and occupy who later offer the timeshare for sale. What about buying, they talk about me buying a timeshare and then maybe later turn around and what? Sell it. Doesn't require a license. Why is lines 28 and 29 there? Because they're not exempt from 475-1, they're exempt from 475-2. So they're not governed by the same part of the law that we are. They have their own separate commission, it's called the Real Estate Appraisal Board. Interesting. When we do our instructor seminar, the instructors for the appraisal license are also a part of that. The next one, line 30, is court-appointed individuals. When you get to court-appointed, the courts can appoint anybody they want to and pay them whatever they feel is proper. 475 doesn't have anything to say about that. Hotel and motel clerks who rent lodging accommodations on behalf of the establishment. Now, obviously, if they get a straight salary, but in some places, they get bonuses and incentives to get people to stay longer or take more services or whatever the case may be.
Is that okay as long as it's quarterly?
Doesn't matter.
That's the end of the table.
If you'll notice, it says that those people are exempt from 475.
Yeah.
Point blank, exempt from 475, because they're governed by a statute, it's 500 and something, I never can remember. The statute that regulates lodging and restaurants. So there was a conflict between that law and 475. But obviously that law was more appropriate to what these people were doing than 475. So what they had to do to end the conflict is make one of them exempt from the other. So they decided to make the hotel motel clerks exempt from 475, but they're still regulated under this 500 and something. Because you think about it, it makes sense. You got two laws governing the same purpose. Obviously, there's going to be conflict. The next one, you don't need a real estate license to deal in securities, you need a securities license. Now, a business broker, this would come into play. Because if I'm selling businesses or I'm selling corporations as a part of the business, there's stock involved. And if I'm going to deal with that, which obviously I want to, there's money there to be made, I'd have to have a real estate license would help. And then the last one. I remember, for what seems like forever, a apartment complex would tell you when you rent it that if you referred someone who rented a unit, they'd give you a free month.
Oh, well, that, good times, those times.
Well, the good times have gone by.
And I was 50.
All it is $50. Unless you have a real estate license. I just got, my wife just referred someone to, and just got $1,500 commission.
Oh, yeah? If you're a realtor, you can get that money? Oh, that's good to know.
All she did was go in and register them.
Huh.
Easy money.
She actually took them in person.
I'm sorry?
She actually took them.
I'm not worried about it.
It depends on the community. In this case, she did, yes. But there are some communities that, as long as you give them, can hand them a business card, to go along with. But that's one thing, if I'm going to be showing people in these apartment complexes, I want to call the leasing office and find out, number one, do they cooperate? And number two, what is the cooperation? But, and then you would ask, do I need to bring them in to register them? In my mind, I'd still want to take them in. I may not have to go back the next 3 times they go back to do things, look at things. But I think going in the first time with them, you also get a chance to meet the salespeople in there. And because then when I've got somebody that's a little tough tenant, and I've got a relationship with these leasing people, it may benefit me in getting someone in there.
Does a signature allow that as far as you helping people with rentals other than just buying? Because I know some just strictly are for buyers and sellers.
We do anything that's legal that makes money.
You can sell a commercial building and next week sell an apartment. They don't care as long as you're selling it
No,
for
as
that.
far as renters.
Oh, yeah, no, it doesn't matter.
We do a ton of those,
Yeah.
a ton.
Okay.
Half of their businesses run
And right now, you're seeing tons of rental coming along because
Right.
the season's coming.
Right.
And files, a lot of files I'm doing now, they're closed now because all the monies are paid and everything, but it doesn't start until October, November. I got one And then the other day doesn't start until January.
That's the
But
highest.
they paid all the money, and they've done everything. So I'm able to close out the file and everything gets paid. Okay, questions on this?
If you work for a signature, company.
Right,
And this thing
yeah,
is
that we'll talk about later on. Yeah,
Is there appointed rental agents in each agency?
now,
Anybody could?
there are some that do focus on it. But, no, there's not anybody that's designated, other than maybe the on-sites.
I mean, the sites that are.
There's a couple of the on-sites, there's one person, that's all, everybody feeds the rentals to her. She's the rental lady in the office.
Okay.
But that's one of the on-site.
Which means that they're in certain development?
Yeah.
Yeah, in certain development.
She's actually in one of the central villages. But we have an office in either right at or in all four central villages. So, needless to say, we generate a lot of.
And what's the split on the rentals? Is it different for every office or not? It is?
It may be different for individuals. You won't get as big a split on site. Can you tell me why? Because the company's handing you business on a silver platter. Provide you an office and everything you need. So you're not gonna get big splits on site. Doesn't make sense. I mean, if you think about it, you look at it from a business perspective. Obviously, Ben wants to pay you. You're generating him money, he will pay. But you've got a business to run.
I promise you.
But the volume would be more volume on site though.
Yeah, generally speaking, although the company, when the company first started, we were the four central villages. That basically was the company. We were a totally different, we have a totally different face today than we did then.
Yeah, that's all.
And again, it depends the on-site you're at. It depends the time of year. Also can affect that. Okay, let's go to chapter 3.
Question number 32, go back to page 35.
Oh,
I have a question.
Yeah.
We go back on page 35, just doing the practice test. It says circle the following letters indicate which individual is single or exempt from the listed license. Should be a A, which is a person who has been given a power of attorney.
What are the other answers?
B, salesperson of a real estate developer who received permission.
That's eliminated, next.
C, owners of timeshare period who offer their timeshare period to resell, or a salaried employee of a company who sell property owned by a
What says which individuals?
as part of the employee responsibility as an employee.
Okay, what's the question?
Circle the corresponding letter to indicate which individual listed below are exempt from real estate licensure.
The first one?
The first one was the person who has been given a power of attorney
Okay.
for the purpose of signing contract.
What's the answer? He said the answer.
I think it.
No, what's the answer key say? In the back of your book, what the answer key is.
Oh, I know.
I'm not sure, it sounds like that there's more than one answer. Yeah. That's not usually the way. Okay. In these practice quizzes, yeah.
Really? Okay. So we have some of this test? We have some of this?
It's up to you. It's up to you. I'm more worried about the questions at the end. All right, this is chapter 2.
Yeah, charge it to
What question number is it?
Wait, C, I think it's C. C is the answer.
And I'll hear you talk at once, I don't hear anything. Which question was it?
I said A.
No, which question?
Number 22, number 22, appreciate
It's A, C, and D.
The answer is A, C, and D.
You can have English,
Now, everybody listen to me very carefully. The questions like that are not multiple choice. Because in a multiple choice question, that would have been all of the above. Because there was only one wrong one. So if that was a question on the test, you would have those three and all the above. By the way, if you get an all the above question and you don't have a clue what they're talking about, mark all the above. If you know two answers are right and you're not sure about the third, mark all the above. If you've got a question where A says must, B says must, C says must, and D says may, and I have no clue what they're talking about, I'm marking D. May. Why? Because the other three were must. Or you can do it any way you want. Okay, page 43, if you will. All right, this chapter we get to take a look at the department, the division, and FREC. On page 43, starting with line 14, where it says the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, right at the bottom of the page. Put a bracket around the rest of the page. And then turn the page back. And let's do a bracket from 1 to 19. Now, let's take a moment and take a look at what this says. Because I want you to get an idea of the relationship between these three agencies. So I'm on 43, I'm at line 16, bottom of the page. The Department of Business and Professional Regulation is an agency charged with licensing and regulating businesses and professions in Florida. So the department doesn't spend its whole day worrying about real estate. Real estate happens to be one of the largest or the largest agency that's a part of the department. The first night, did I show you 475? Did I go into the computer?
Yes.
But in there were like 33 different businesses and professions that were regulated by the department. So obviously the department's focus is not real estate. It's the different agencies underneath of it to make sure they're doing their job. On the top of the next page it says that would deter qualified people from entering the chosen profession. Legislation believes professions under the department should be regulated when the unregulated practice can harm the public. If you have a choice between the agent and the public and you don't know which one to choose, shoot the agent, protect the public. Why? Because it just told you to. This law isn't designed to protect you. This law is designed to protect you from the public. But it's also not there to hinder you if you're doing things like you should to make money. They don't care how much money you make as long as you do it the right way. The second bullet says the public is not adequately protected by other statutes, local ordinances, or federal laws. An example of that is, they didn't, when they said they had to separate out the appraisal, they didn't create a new law to regulate appraising, because they already had a law they could use to do that, which was 475. That's why they broke 475 into part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is us, part 2 are the appraisers. Then it says on line 9, the department is under the executive branch of the governor. Now, you know that every state department is under the governor. The Department of Education, the Department of State, they all fall under the governor. So this is no different. It says the agency is structured according to the requirements of Chapter 20. The legislature under 455 granted authority to the department to investigate consumer complaints, issue subpoenas when conducting investigations, issue cease and desist orders to unlicensed individuals. Remember I said the FREC didn't have any control over it. It's the department. And issue citations to individuals licensed by the department. It says the chief administrative officer of the department is the secretary. Well, we know that every government department, the head is the secretary. And you'll notice they're located where? Why?
Capital.
Capital, that's a hard answer. Anybody want to disagree with that one? Last stop now. Now, I want to put a bracket around the first paragraph on 45, but we've already talked about it. On page 45, next page, first 6 lines.
Yeah, that is what we were talking about.
Yeah. And it doesn't say the number of days here, but it's 10. 10 if it's not moving out of state. At the bottom of the page, it talks about the division of real estate. What does the division of real estate focus on? Don't look at that. Look at the name and tell me what it deals with. How do you know that?
Professional.
Because it says so. It does say, does yours say the division of real estate? Maybe yours says something different than mine. It says there, the division of real estate provides all functions related to the regulation of general real estate. The duties of the division are essentially administrative and ministerial. The administrative duties include routine duties and clerical functions on behalf of FREC. When I first got into business, the Florida Real Estate Commission was in Orlando, and all this stuff they're talking about the department and the division are doing was done by the commission. They have what they call the Sunshine Law Review. Periodically, they review laws to make sure that they are up to date. Well, in the late 70s, when they reviewed 475, they said, wait a minute. We have 4 brokers governing the whole state of brokers and salespeople, with nobody regulating the 4 brokers. So they felt that there had to be some regulation above the commission. So what they wound up doing is, they took all the administrative functions away from the commission. Commission is composed of, and I'll show you in a minute, of 7 people. That is the commission. If you call Orlando where they are, they will not answer the phone. It's either going to answer the Division of Real Estate or the Department of Business and Professional Regulation and the Division of Real Estate. Now, FREC has always been in Orlando, and is still in Orlando. The department is in Tallahassee, and it's always been there. My question is this: is the division located in Tallahassee or Orlando?
Orlando.
Tallahassee.
No, the department is in Tallahassee.
What's the function of the division? I think it talks about administrative functions for
Yeah,
FREC.
yeah.
Now, let me ask you a stupid question. If your administrative staff you were in Orlando, what would you want your administrative staff? Orlando or Tallahassee? Okay, that's why they're in Orlando.
So the division is in Orlando?
Huh?
The division is in Orlando?
Yes, that's what I just asked.
Right, I saw. And the department?
Is in Tallahassee.
Oh, okay.
All departments are in
In
Tallahassee.
Tallahassee, okay.
The person that's the head of the division is called the director. If you notice the top of page 46.
You said the person what? It's called the director, but I just want to know what.
The division.
Of the division of real estate. It's at the top of 46, first line. It's interesting. The division is part of the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. But the director is appointed by the secretary, but they have to be approved by who?
Of the department.
No.
By the governor? About the,
Right. It says there on line 2 at the top of page 46,
that's right.
subject to approval of the majority of the vote of the Bar Real Estate Commission. So the department appoints the director, but FREC says thumbs up or thumbs down.
So FREC is like Congress.
Yeah, I guess. But FREC is not treated like, like the other, the real estate end of it isn't treated like a lot of the other agencies. Part of it is because of the size. Get over 300,000 real estate licenses. That's a lot of licenses. Speaking of the Florida Real Estate Commission, let's go to the bottom of page 46. Let's put a bracket, starting with line 5 to the bottom of the page. Line 46, line 5, bottom of the page. In that first paragraph, in lines 6 through 14, it talks about who they regulate. You'll notice appraisers aren't mentioned. Why? Because they don't fall under 475.1, they fall under 2. And there is a separate board for 475.2, Real Estate Appraisal Board. At the bottom of the page, it talks about composition. Let's put a bracket around lines, I've already done that, excuse me.
Yeah.
Line 23, put a star beside of that bullet. Where it says the 2 remaining members are consumer members. many members of the commission are licensees?
Five.
Well, how many are consumer members?
Two.
Two. And there's a total of 7.
That's fine.
Okay, so
7 minus
2 minus 7 minus 2 is 5. I know this math. I know you don't like math.
We're gonna go over that.
The star is the fact that 2 of the members must be considered consumer members or lay members sometimes. That's the star. And one of them has to be at least 62 years old. 60?
What?
60. One of the members has to be at least 60?
60.
60. Now, if you live in South Florida, and you can't figure out why
Okay.
an agency would have a member of that age group, you need therapy. Remember I said that the next time you see the headless driver.
That's young, that's too young.
I thought that it was because of the knowledge.
The reason for it is so that the public has a representative
On each
on the
group,
commission.
like each group has a
That's what it's really good for. Now, the 60, again, of course, since things are appointed, obviously there's no politics involved in any of this. Over on page 47, it talks about the term. They each serve a 4-year term with a maximum of 8, but they staggered them. When this was created, they staggered them so that at one point, not more than 2 would go out at a time. Because they appointed this whole new group, not the one you were looking at, but years ago. If they appointed all 7 of them for 4 years, what would happen at the end of 4 years? A whole new crew would come in.
No, what is going on?
Right. So it made more sense to stagger them so that they didn't lose more than 2. And on page 47, line 8, 9, and 10, you can see that they're going to get very rich
Yeah.
being a member of the commission.
$50 per day.
Yeah.
Serving jury duty.
That's not bad.
You make the other one. Obviously, and there also we cover expenses, but the point there is, if they're not really in it with the money. Okay, I think maybe this is a good spot to close it down. Everybody have a good night?